That we approve the minutes from the April meeting.
Okay, second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
And was there no meeting in May? Where's the May?
No, we skipped a meeting.
We skipped it.
Oh,
Remember, we talked about how we're gonna skip 2 a year.
Yeah.
And it worked out well, quite frankly. I mean, it was a light agenda anyway, so.
Was that you all are only required to do 9 of these a year. So, and that one is extremely light agenda and everybody was extremely busy. So it just seemed like a good opportunity to jump in on one.
Okay, so we will jump down to number 2, to our director's report. And I did want to mention that Doug and I and Dora at times go over a lot of this stuff. So, you know, of course I'll report on something, but Doug is so thorough. He's pretty much covering everything I have to say as well. So
We got a shared couple slides in here. So I think mostly an executive though. All right. So you want to jump in?
yeah, go for it.
Give me 1 second. Mine's frozen. There we go. Okay.
All right. So we'll cover just a few items in public this session. There's a ton of work on many levels going into this ARC guideline update. Board liaison level, chair level, staff level. I think it's been a really good exercise. It is wearing Chris out, so we're trying to bring that to a conclusion as quickly as possible, and I think we're almost there. So we'll jump into that. We did bring on Heather Harmony, which I did pass around her resume to everybody, and she's been here. When she took the job, she needed these 2 days, Thursday and Friday this week. But we did start her on Monday. So we've had her for 3 days. Dora and I have obviously been fighting over her and her. So we're trying not to run her off and scare her off too quick. But we are both excited to see her here because she brings a lot of experience.
Did you sort of alter the job she's taking? Is it somewhat different? And can you refresh our memory?
Sure. So the only thing that I really changed was I added about 15% of that role to leadership events support. So, you know, if we have It Takes a Village again or another something like that, then we're going to engage her to support those folks that are doing that. So ideally, we'll see how that goes. If we tend to grow into more events or more shared events, which I kind of hope we do, yeah, that could grow into a full-time position. I don't see that anytime soon, but for sure, you know, that was the idea. Let's get somebody there to support at least the front end of that. And she has some experience with that. Events as well. So, and she does a little artwork on the side, which she showed me on the boat, which is actually pretty good.
She's a very well-rounded human being.
Yeah. So, and she seems very happy to be here, which is good. So,
She live local?
Leland.
So one of the things we liked a lot about her, well, Doug and Dora, I listened in while they were interviewing different candidates, is my biggest question is, are you okay with this boat? Are you okay when the boat isn't running? Are you okay with standing in the hot sun? Are you okay with, I mean, that to me is a really big deal. And she was fine with everything. Excited, really excited, sweet girl.
She claims that she takes 133 to 87. It only takes her like 20 minutes to 22 minutes max to get here. So it's really not bad.
Oh, not bad.
No, it's shorter than Metropath.
Yeah, and
Southport traffic on 211.
She had been doing a lot of consulting for many years. So she was in essence trapped in her house, and she's like, I just want to be with you. So that was part of it too. So happy to have her. We do have a financial update. Do you want to do this one?
Sure. Second here. Stop share that for a second. We'll morph the finance.
Actually, why don't you take the next slide and then we'll jump to it after.
Okay.
I'm sorry, skipped ahead.
No, hang on 1 second. No, I gotta share again. Okay. See?
All right. So for the record, I think, you know, this process has been both collaborative and comprehensive. And I wish there were a room full of people to hear about this, but certainly it'll be online. So I know in prior years, there's been different strategies on how you update documents. This year, it started, the process of updating the design guidelines started really at the beginning of the year. And it started with, intentionally sitting in meetings and having discussions with Chris and saying, as we go through these meetings and issues pop up, real-time issues on each check sheet or application, those get sort of earmarked and put aside in a stack, and then we deal with them at some point throughout the year. And so that was a piece of the process, is as you're going through the monthly meetings, you identify these, these issues that sort of pop up from time to time. And it started there. And then obviously Chris did a deep dive on the guidelines and went through and redlined it. It started with her. That red line then went to the ARC committees, and we suggested to the committees that rather than have a bunch of opinions on the front end, that they designated at least one or two folks plus their chair versus the entire committee from each committee. So we had maybe 6 people, I think, that looked at and did a deep dive and actually went off site down to, I think Tiffany's has a space, and they met and closed doors and just, did a deep dive. And I think that was good with Chris. What came out of that was a bunch more comments. We then pulled those comments together, Chris did. And then we met with the liaisons and the chairs and had Chris present to Derek and Vicky, along with the chairs. We had more discussion in that meeting. It has come sort of full circle back to Chris to pull all that information together. And it is now with me, Dora, and Chris going sort of line by line through it after all of that as well. And then it will go back to the chairs to see if there's anything else. And then from the chairs, it will go to the entire committee with the caveat. And I've kind of sat in on these meetings and said, folks, if you got a strong opinion on one item or two, that's great. But the rest of you focus on the red lines because we've done the work. So I don't want to, there's no need for them to spend a lot of time finding new stuff when we've sort of beat this thing to death.
It comes back to the committee chairs. We put both board liaisons with them.
Yeah, that was the plan. Yep. So we're going to redistribute that, and then we'll give it a couple weeks, but I think, that's plenty of time to be ready for the July board meeting to have a recommendation from both committees. Having looked at this document, there's red lines on pretty much every page. It's a lot of clerical. It's a lot of, just cleanup work. And then there's probably, 3, maybe 4, debatable, I'll call them debatable topics, right? That we're going to see where it shakes out with the committees and what their liaisons and see what their recommendations are. And then that'll get pushed up to the board as a recommendation. And you guys will probably, need to have an opinion on that. Obviously, we'll get it to you before the board meeting. And I will, or Chris, or one of us will sort of call out those, 3 or 4 items that we know are going to be sort of hitting you in the face a little bit. But
I would agree. And you guys don't need to look at every single thing because some of them are just little bitty.
Mm-hmm.
But the main things so that every board member can be educated before we come here, because it's going to take a lot of discussion.
Chris has done a really good job you have the red line in the document, but she also has 3 different color coded highlights to be like, hey, this is something that we have to change in our application system. This is something that's a big change. This is something that's just wording change. So you'll see that green, yellow, and blue highlight, and that kind of helps you look for what you're mainly wanting to look at.
And I think you're going to want to know why the change was made. So we need to have that ready.
mm-hmm.
Okay.
I would like to advocate, this is another touch point with the community and certainly with the contractors, that Heather have a strategy for really rolling it out in a meaningful way, not just posting it to a website. This is significant work. We've been challenged over the years about, how current are these? When do you really look at them? This is such a a terrific milestone in terms of the degree of the process.
Mhm.
Find a way to highlight it and make it visible to everybody.
Agree.
It's a kudo.
Should give full credit. Yeah, I agree, to staff, committee, everybody. I think it's been an executive, we've got a piece that we'll talk about that relates to that. I do think, how we roll it out is important, and what that looks like when at that meeting is important, given, you know, I don't see any substantial changes that are gonna truly impact builders. One or two, maybe. We are recommending some fee and some deposit increases. So that I don't think committee really gets to have an opinion on that. That would be 100% board.
Is the 60/40 crystal clear?
Not Christian. No.
On that a little bit to where it is. There's,
That'd be one of those contentious
I mean,
ones. Yeah. No, we're doing the dive on that one. You know, there's a 30%er in there. There's some CAMA stuff that's very loose that I think we might have dialed in yesterday with the way we're approaching it. So, you know, if we need to, if we think it's a good idea to present to the board, maybe in a webinar after you guys see it, so you're not having to kind of look at it by yourselves.
I think that'd be a great idea.
Yeah,
a
that
little
might.
bit of a Q&A.
Yeah.
I think that's so important because there's so many,
I like that
some
idea.
of these are, like Doug said, some of them are, I mean, we got to be careful with how we handle it. So,
I think it would also be helpful before we get it, or as part of that process of presenting it to us, that we get a sense of the staff's actions and thinking, as well as the committee's actions and thinking, so that we're not looking at this for the first time with a kind of a blank slate. So, you know, have these things been discussed? What was the reason that these changes were proposed?
that's right.
So that we're not also, you know, so we have the benefit of that, and so we're also not kind of going, well, I don't like that, and, you know, just changing it and sort of dumping all over that work that.
Well, we want to be
that-
supportive.
Right.
I mean, our goal is to be supportive.
The absolutely beautiful thing is Chris has comments that come out from the changes off on the sideline that says this was discussed at the 526
Okay.
meeting and Derek's the one who brought it up, or this
Okay.
was discussed at this meeting and, you know, Tiffany's the one who brought it up for this reason. So there is a little bit of background on that, but I think it'd be awesome to do a pre-meeting and have Chris be able to walk you guys through it too.
Have Chris do it. Yeah, I think she's done a great job of documenting the why, which we talked about that a lot. Because you guys will ultimately have to defend it at some point, I'm sure. But you know, I think that's a great idea.
You know, and I think just to back up Doug and Chris, that the changes are to improve the ambiguities that are out there. They're so hard to interpret. So these guys have done a great job.
Yeah.
All right, good idea. You
Okay.
guys can do that, that'd be great.
Is there any look at the landscape guidelines too? So that we, you know, half of what we see board-wise.
Yeah.
False landscape.
We have a lot of it, especially revolving around the golf course and a few other things of that nature. We've changed a lot of that language to not necessarily change how it's done per se, but to leave out a lot of that ambiguity of like, this is, you know, this may or may not know this is what's going to happen, you know, a little bit more certainty to it.
We just put some language in yesterday about when Christine and myself and Adam and Paul kind of rode around and looked at impacts from the golf course perspective of what's been going on, trimming, clearing. I think Derek pulled the word clearing out, which I think is a great idea. So yeah, I think there's some added language in there surrounding that we looked at too. All righty. Mentioned Heather, and then financials. You want to pick that one or?
Sure, just secure.
While she's looking for it, I'll recap kind of the finance meeting highlights. So we just had the finance meeting recently this week. we covered the financials. Financials are in good shape. We'll go through the numbers here in a second. The one or two sidebars that we're working on are the CPA support, which has been an endeavor to find somebody during tax season to even talk to us. And then we started with a list of 5. I think a few of those came from Finance Committee meeting a couple meetings ago, and then a couple folks on the island. Only 2 of that 5 actually really responded to us, and they're decent companies. They're one of them is a regional based company, Stroud. The other one is DMJRS, I believe it is, who disappeared on me out of the bottom 2, but has just sent me an email yesterday or the day before saying they were out of town and wanted to talk. So, but Stroud sent over a proposal. So I think I'm working towards getting Stroud on board. It's an hourly thing with them. So Leanne has an issue with how to do a journal entry or this or that at a CPA level discussion, then she can pick up the phone and call them, and we'll just track it hourly, which is no different than what we had with our prior person, Duncan. Just that hopefully they'll pick up the phone. And so I haven't, I was trying to get it done for this meeting. We just, it's trying to get folks to be responsive is tough, but I'm feeling pretty good about Stroud. I'm going to have just another discussion with that other company. Both of them are Wilmington based. Both of them have multiple CPAs. Both of them do taxes for HOAs. They've been around for a while. So I think they're credible companies with decent amount of staff behind them. I would have no problem with either company supporting us. I think in the discussion in the Finance Committee is it makes sense to package up the taxes with this company, just to make it attractive enough for them to support us, because a few phone calls here and there is not a lot of work for them. So ideally what we'll do is we'll package up doing the taxes with them. That needs to be separate from the auditor anyway. And prepping our year-end financials. So the goal is to get one of them on board, as soon as we can get them tied up. And then I think it's a month and a half to 2 months is what both of them are telling me to, get through the year-end financials to get them ready for the auditors. So we're about 3 months behind where we would like to have been with this process, given we had the Duncan issue that kind of threw us for a loop where he just said he didn't want to deal with us anymore. And then we hit tax season when we needed to go searching for somebody, and that just drew the whole process out. So, so that was part of the discussion in finance. Everybody seemed to be fine with that. Ernie is the auditors. I would suggest that we just deal with them this year and move on next year if we want to look at a bid scenario for that service. I did get some opinions around the table at Finance Committee that doesn't really make sense to bid auditors if you've got a good auditor, simply because they can change partners or reviewers within their firm, which is pretty common, year over year, and you're kind of getting that different look from a different person, even though it's the same company. I have done that elsewhere too. And plus it is nice to kind of have that consistency from a presentation standpoint if you've got a consistent auditor. So I think we can discuss that further. I do have Ernie on board to do, they had to file the tax extension. I think we'll let them go ahead and do the taxes this year because they're already in the process. And then next year we'll look at, a discussion whether we want to not use Ernie or what do we want to do. So I think that's a later year discussion for that.
So just to clarify, the organization that you're favoring is not the one that disappeared How do you?
We liked them both equally.
Okay.
Yeah, Leanne and I were both on the phone with them, and you know, you know, the one that kind of disappeared on me, the DMR, it's an initial. Um, we could go either way. I mean, we were happy with both.
Well, and the reason why I asked that is because that would to me be a sign that they are either so small that you know it's the person that you know didn't get back to you as the person there,
Yeah.
which would kind of cut against what you just said about you know having multiple people there to
Yeah.
you know to
That's a big part of it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm leaning toward the one that's responded. And this other one, I think they had a legitimate reason, but they didn't communicate it. So, you know. Okay.
Paul feels good about everything you're saying.
Paul feels good about everything. And coincidentally, I think we're going to touch on goals. He was concerned that Vicky might come after him. So they want to get motivated for their goals. So
He's right to be concerned.
he knows Vicky well. And we were all having a little bit of humor around that. But yeah, no, there are 3 goals I think with them that they are focused on, and we can touch on that and a little later here.
Right. So our financial summary for May, I'm going to cover over that. Leanne is holding down the main office today because, as you know, Diane Maceris is huge into public safety and her volunteering, so she's helping out with Public Safety Day.
Yeah.
So I'm just popping in for Leanne. But basically, our executive summary we're going over for the financial packet is that we are doing well. It's a positive month, even though there's a few things that are a little bit out of order. Some of that being just catching up on some of the delayed assessment payments. And then also just dealing with a little bit of, there's probably about, I'd say 3 to 4 core issues with Vanica on the financial side that's making it really difficult to kind of get caught up on everything. So, I mean, we have the numbers where we need them, but like I said, everything's pretty positive. We're just going to go ahead and try to keep working on a few assessments. Leanne's gotten to the point now where she's just doing, we've already done like 1 round of them, but we're doing another round of just phone calls of just making sure that the people that are missing their assessments are aware of that.
I just have a question about assessments because I noticed that in the report. Sure. It seems like every year we're chasing. What is it that people say when they miss for 6 months?
It's a variable. I had a woman who told me she owned a place here for 10 years and she's never paid an assessment ever. So, it's really a variable of anything. And some of them, like for this year, we can definitely account for a few different variances. Like we have a large group of people that do automatic payments. So it comes out yearly and they don't think anything of it. Since we switched softwares, they had to basically sign up for that.
Reestablish it.
Yeah. And we sent out 3 communications, but as always, sometimes you miss all 3 of the, you miss those communications. So
When it's a second home, that can happen.
Hmm?
When it's a second home.
Exactly. And in their head, they probably got the statement, they're like, well, this is on auto pay and didn't even think anything of it. So we had a few of those. It varies across the board as to what it is. But I mean, every year, like you said, we do have a few people that just, until you start threatening me, don't want to pay.
It just surprises me that it takes so long. Do we actually send an invoice looking official statement?
Mhm.
Okay,
We have.
I'll shut up. I just don't understand it.
Yeah, Betty, I think just having lived in the HOA world for a little bit, I've seen about 3.5 to 7. You're always chasing about 3.5 to 7% at every HOA.
Okay.
And we're, this year I was a little concerned maybe 2 meetings ago because we were 400 and some we're chasing. We're down to 145. We're feeling a lot better about where we're at right now. But it took a lot of phone calls and things to get
You
there.
know what we did last year and the year before, and I know Derek and I were pretty good about this. If we could, there's people that we know would be mortified that they haven't paid.
Right.
And if
Exactly.
we just, as a friend and
Mhm.
neighbor, reach out to them, it'll be taken care of probably that day. So maybe we could take a
Yeah,
look.
we could do that again.
I think that's a good point. Which actually raises a question I was going to ask, which is, are we looking at liens at an absolute last resort? And are we, the policy changes that we made, GASP actually calling somebody or trying to write to them before, spending all the money for a lien? Is that running well?
It's running well. We also, it's been in our policy before did the policy. It was brought up again about doing like a late fee at a certain point. We did implement those late fees starting in March after the cutoff date. And that did get a few phone calls as well as to why am I getting a late fee? We're like, well, it's late. So, I mean, I think that has helped a good bit too. Even though it's only $10, it was enough to be like it was enough to almost like tick an alarm of like, well, this isn't going to come out auto pay. This isn't, so that has helped. I think
Bigger battles over the late fees, honestly, than there's been some that I've waived, and there's been, with the bulk of them, I'm not waiving. So there's been some extenuating circumstances, and they've come in and we've talked about it. I'm like, okay, but for the most part, so we've done some hand holding through the process, and then we've also we pushed out the due date as well. So I think it was. I think we pushed it out about 30 days. So, if we were hitting them with a late fee, we pushed it out 30 days. We gave them some grace because we were going through the transition. Beyond that, I've become a little more rigid. So,
May I ask, are we pretty good up to date with people's off-island addresses, phone numbers, emails?
That's the consistency I've noticed with the phone calls. Leanne, Diane, and myself basically printed off when we were at almost 500 the list and physically called and or emailed if we couldn't get a hold of somebody. A lot of people were like, well, I didn't get it. Like, you obviously have the wrong address. And I would rattle off the address that we do have for them and the email address. And they're like, oh yeah, those are right. I'm like, okay. So, I mean, we actually are pretty, from what I had maybe 2 or 3, and most of those were people that almost like share their home with their family members, and the wrong family member was the one on the list. Like the person who took care of the bills wasn't the one on the
Well, that's good
contact.
to know.
But for the most part, we have been updated. Like I said, most of them were correct.
we can send you a list if you want to see the list.
Yeah, we
I
definitely
think it
do.
will hurt for us as board members that have various different people, neighbors we know, that, give a couple of
We'll
calls.
call it a report. We can send it to you.
One other question I've got on this is, I know the terminology has been assessments, and that's confusing to me and to many, I think, particularly as we're, as club members, and there's your dues, and then an assessment is like a special thing.
That's ugly
And
word.
so I think there's a misconception among a lot of DHA members that, oh, this is a special assessment, or I'm being assessed. I'm wondering if it would make sense to give some thought to just calling it dues, your HOA dues.
I wholeheartedly second, third, fifth that.
Yeah.
I think it ought to be changed immediately.
Yeah, assessment carries undertones
Yeah.
of,
We don't call our villa assessment, we call our villa dues.
Yeah.
Your dues are X.
Right.
an assessment is alligator station.
Exactly.
That's an assessment.
Yeah.
Yes, that's an assessment. So I would wholeheartedly implement that. I would be behind it 1,000%.
I'm good with it. I just think we ought to. It always comes back to your governing docs. So if your governing docs call it an assessment, and somebody questions that they got a dues versus an assessment, we have to defend it. We just need to look at that maybe.
Okay, let's do it.
But I think I got no problem informally calling it dues.
Yeah.
I just think formally, if we get into a legal situation, it's going to be whatever the governing docs say.
But whatever community you go to, if you're going to go buy into, the first thing is, what's HOA dues? Not assessments. Then my next question is, have you been assessed in the last 5 years? To me, it's two different questions.
Right.
Yeah. I
And
can see
instead
that.
we call it special assessment.
Yeah, so we can look into that, but I wholeheartedly agree with Steve.
Yep.
I got consultative, so we'll look into the governing docs, make sure it's all kosher. And we can even you guys could do a vote via email just to
I did.
to switch it to dues as long as the governing docs are.
Yeah.
All right, so there's a few notable variables for the month. Like Doug had mentioned, we have 145 unpaid assessments to the end of May or dues. Their neighborhoods are tracking pretty well. There's 2 non-payments for Keeper's Landing, 1 for Surfman's Walk, and 1 for Sunrise Crescent and 2 for Surfman's Walk. We have a miscellaneous neighborhood that has 1 outstanding payment. Our ARC has been crazy busy over the last several months, so they are running ahead of budget. And then our communications and marketing, our average communication dollars have actually gone above for May, but they are below for the whole year together as right now. So we are looking forward, especially between Heather and I, bringing that back up to where it needs to be as well. And then our amenities, our Association Center is a little bit lower than what was projected, but that's always guessing because it's just a matter of who's in here, what are they in here for? Is it a wedding event? Is it one of the members?
Do some of these people that book this building once a week, do they pay anything?
It depends on what they provide. So for instance, if we have someone that's providing like exercise for the association, then we don't charge them because they're providing.
What if they're charging individuals? Why are we not charging them if they're charging individuals?
I mean, we can. But I mean, so people like that are obviously like if Project Longevity has something going on in here, we don't charge her to use the building.
It's
providing
thing though.
It's providing a service for the members.
What about something like yoga instruction?
That's that's part, you have yoga, you have a couple other things, and I know that people pay that instructor. So if they're paying the instructor, why are we giving it? It's just a question I've never.
Closed down. If we charge, then that's going to raise their fees
Yeah.
for yoga. And, and so is the idea to,
Provide a service.
I mean,
yeah,
it's a
provide a
community
service.
center for the community,
It was just a question.
I tend to agree with Steve. If somebody who's not a member wants to rent it, it's a different ballgame.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
but members,
Members ought to have access.
I'm just wondering if we have so many activities in here that we don't charge for and we're booked and we have to turn people away. That's, I think.
Maybe a guideline that we could consider adopting, not necessarily formally, but is the charge that's being here, I'm going to use the word assessed to the individuals for usage of this thing. Is it nominal or is it profit oriented?
Okay.
So, if I'm paying $10
It's not.
to go to a yoga session, then I'd consider that nominal. If I'm paying $30 to go to a yoga session, that's profit.
Makes
So
sense.
Pam, when she was here, I think she was charging $20 a person. And when I take yoga sessions off island, I pay $35. So like, you know what I mean? Like it's not like she was charging a crazy amount of money.
what about something like the Smith Island Art Room, when they booked the room for a couple of days for?
I don't believe we charge.
And so I think we need to understand, I mean, are we providing a community service? And, the building is covered in the dues that people pay. I think we need to be careful, but if it's, I would assume anything that is not a community service oriented activity does get charged. If anyone just wants to rent.
And we do, for the most part, if an individual's running this for an event, like a birthday party, things like that, they get charged a member fee to
Yeah.
figure.
Okay.
If they're a wedding that's outside of the member, they have a non-member charge. So we are doing most of our charges, but for things like Smith Island Art League, you get into that fine line of they're providing an art service for the community. They do a lot of community, engagement. So then it's like, it's kind of a tricky line.
There's got to be some benefit to being a member of the BHA.
And for the most part too, like this is always a guess. Our association building budget is always a guess of how much money we're going to bring in compared to what we had last year, compared to the year before. And this is all coming from the end of May. Wedding season's here. We already have several booked out. I'm sure it'll catch itself up in other places. It's a very nominal issue. All right, so for the expenses side of things, our payroll has been down and under budget due to the fact that we had an unfilled position. That's obviously going to catch itself right back up now that we have, now that we've put Heather in position. Let's see. Our computer expenses are running a little bit above budget. For the beginning of the year, when we budgeted everything for this year, we did most of that spending at the very beginning of the year to do basically laptop and equipment replacements. We've had one or two things break that weren't planned on, so it's a little bit above budget. And then our software is running a little bit high due to the fact that we are still holding an enumerate during this transition until we could feel comfortable letting it go, especially with the 2025 audit still needing to be taken care of.
Is the audit done?
I'm sorry?
Is the audit done?
No.
No, we need to get that CPA assistance on board to
Okay.
wrap up the year end to help Leanne.
Okay, I just wanted to mention, I'm sending a note out to the leadership team, just to tell them that, we have a $4,000 surplus from the event. And if whatever they choose to do with it, we're just holding it, but it's up to them to apply it to some community activity,
I
okay?
think we've got a slide on that. We've got a slide in executive that might touch on that.
Okay,
And that was my very next one, was board related, is that the Education and Recreation Committee appears to be way above budget on extra money, and that's because it's a surplus from the It Takes a Village, so. Let me see. Communications and marketing, the expenses continue to track. Let me see, we got nothing to report on our taxes and our insurance. You see. We have a little bit higher of an expense for our common area maintenance. And it costs a lot more than we thought it would. Let me see. And the managed neighborhoods are off a little bit when it comes to expenses, but that's just because a lot of their 2025 managed to carry over, and the CPA will need to adjust that when they get on board. And our boatyard and our garden plots are pretty much all full and accounted for and on point.
I see that you have a couple of plots at the garden area that haven't been paid or received. How long do you leave that way? Because I know that there's people that, if somebody is not getting back to you, do we not have a wait list?
Diane has access to a wait list. It's not a very long one for the garden list, but she keeps it full. So if someone pops out or something goes awry, she's on it. Yes.
I think she said the two that are not real desirable little areas.
Yeah, they're not the best ones that are available.
Been in there, so,
Haven't in a while.
yeah.
And off the record, I think she actually already filled one of them 2 days ago. So, but yeah, that is our finance report there.
Okay,
that's great. I like that simplified messaging for us rather than
There's numbers.
dragging ourselves.
Like all the numbers.
Well, you notice I
Happy
didn't
to
have to leave the
drag
room
them
this
out.
time.
Much better.
Poor Leanne.
I know the finance people are doing their job.
Exactly.
Mention Vanica.
Yes, we went a little more in depth with the finance
Okay.
committee on Wednesday.
We have one more slide that we used last year on the ARC update. But I'll touch on Vanica real quickly. So we're 6 months into the Vanica process. What we thought was maybe going to be a 3-month exercise stretched into 6, and that's not really due to the staff. I will tell you, we had a little bit of come to Jesus meeting with them, or I did about 2 weeks ago. But a laundry list of things that maybe 10 items that I felt were a real problem for us and creating a lot of extra time for Leanne. And obviously the intention of a new software is to save time. And so, a week or two ago, I said, I sent them a note and I said, either get somebody in our office or we're going to have to consider some other alternatives, which is not obviously what I would like to do. And so we had a good meeting, I think yesterday. Was it yesterday?
Today we sat down with Josh for about an hour and
Yeah.
kind of hashed out. He's broken all of our issues down into 3 major categories. He personally is going to address one. If it has to have someone else come in, that's fine, but he's going to be there as well. So he's kind of going to be acting as our liaison. And once those three major categories are addressed, he's coming to the island personally to sit down with us staff and make sure that they're all working the way that they should be working.
And may I ask, didn't they, after we signed on with Vantica, was it afterwards they said that they're building a whole new structure for us because they didn't really deal with this kind of entity?
So, it's been an interesting exercise, right? So when we did the bid process last year, we got whittled it down to three companies, two really, one out in Texas and this one local in Wilmington. And they've got about 75%-ish more capability than our existing software. What has been interesting to see unfold is they probably have 25% more bugs in that software than we had in Enumerate, and you can't really live that until you're in it. And so, prime example, bank reconciliation. We specifically had a meeting to make sure that our bank and their software talked right at the bid process. As we've learned, that reconciliation process is broken to a certain extent. Not unfixable with Leanne, it's just costing her a lot of hours to have to go back and deal with it. And so my level of frustration has been growing. I gave it the first 3 months, to try to get it worked out, but it reached a kind of a tipping point last couple of weeks. And that's when I gave an ultimatum to either get somebody in our office and sit there until it's fixed, or we're going to consider some other alternatives. So this response is, it's good. And it's not training issues. And I think, half of the issues that we talked about yesterday were them not doing a full implementation correctly. So we had issues where, you might have a setting within the system that we just didn't know. Obviously, we wouldn't know about it. When they implemented and brought us over, they didn't correct it correctly. One of them was a template for a board discussion where, for you guys to be getting notices, the invoices were there where a template was needed. Well, how would we know that, right? So we had and Dora kind of gave them her 2 cents on that too. But there's things like that. Then there's some other I consider real bugs that they're saying, well, we're in process. We've been notified, and we're addressing those. And I go, guys, the discussion yesterday was, you've been around long enough not to have these kind of issues. I've dealt with too many HOA softwares to know that reconciling bank with your bank is not one of those things that shouldn't be working today. That's not it. So I think what was interesting in that discussion yesterday too was I sort of put them on point, and I said, how many of these other companies are management companies versus self-managed associations where staff are managing it? And that was the difference. They said, well, come think of it, most of them are managed companies. So management companies have IT typically, right? Mm-hmm. So what I'm gathering from this process is the software company is pushing a lot to these management companies that have IT folks that are in-house that are dealing with these issues. And so, obviously we don't have that. And so, the fact that this was the most knowledgeable person I've heard from Vantica that was on our call yesterday. So that tells me something. At least they got somebody there that could literally answer all the questions.
Would that be the person that comes here?
He will be the person that comes here. So
The person until we stop threatening to leave them.
so I'm not throwing in the towel. You can imagine what that would do to some staff folks here. So we're working our way through it. But
Building a business local. aren't
they had a
they?
$300 million injection last year and they've been around for quite a while. So
Oh, yeah.
it's supposed to be all of these companies struggle with customer service. I mean, they just struggle. And I don't know that they completely understand it. I mean, it's not to knock a generation, but it's a IT group. It's a younger run company. And I just swear, I don't think, I get customer service. I'm sure you guys get customer service. They do not. I mean, it's just not in their DNA.
Which is that one of the major issues we had with the numerate, I mean, at least with these guys, we can get a hold of them, but they schedule us for a half-hour call. Once they hit the end of their half hour, they're like, oh, okay, yeah, you see, you get it, right? And they had been talking 100 miles an hour, doing things like switching out templates and being like, well, you'll have to adjust this later. Like just saying things like that real fast. And it was just like, that's not, I'm just a checkbox at this point. Like you check the box, you're moving on, and it's not the problems aren't being fixed. So, but he seems to be, this guy seems very knowledgeable.
Be interesting to know what percentage of their customers are based in companies that do have an IT staff that provide that interface versus you're a pure customer, totally relying on their service.
I'd say it's probably pretty high.
Some of them do.
All right, dashboard, and I'm done.
Maybe we could work a deal to help them develop a customer service model for the independent client.
I think that's kind of
I'd be
what.
open to that. I mean,
It was yesterday. And
we're doing it anyway.
Yeah.
We're
you're doing it anyway.
We're doing it anyway.
It's like, I've already been doing that, so. So write it up. All right, so this is our, just a tracker that we've kind of put together. Well, I should say this is a slide that we put together out of our ARC tracker that the girls use upstairs to kind of give you guys a visual of year to date. This being the end of ARC-A in June, because our ARC-B in June hasn't come back completely yet. So that's kind of where we're at with the numbers wise. So this is what they've been working with. They have 140 submittals total. You've got your sections split out there. They have 527 review comments, and most of those are the comments that you see in the ARC meetings. Probably that's closer to 7 to 8 of comments that Chris and her team have managed to knock out before it even gets to the ARC's like the committee's meetings. So most of them they're running off of right now are minor reviews, but minors can go anywhere from changing out a flagpole to literally adding square footage of things. So
I was gonna say, is a renovation considered a minor?
they can be, yes. So like I said, minors are very, very wide range. You can have something very simplistic, like, hey, I want to put up a cute sign in my house, or it can go all the way to, I'm adding a bunch of square footage, I'm changing my impervious coverage, things of that nature. But all in all, these numbers are showing that they are doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing, and they're doing it fast, which, you know, shows the system is up and running the way it should be.
Yeah.
They have been working their butts off every single day.
Vitamins have done it.
What, I mean, at a macro level, aside from the tremendous leadership of Derek and your counterparts, are there any trends that you could see that's making this more efficient and effective this year than years past?
I think the major trends are the changes that we've made at the beginning of the year, or even before the beginning of the year. I think putting that cover sheet into play, where you have a committee sitting down knowing these are the 6 issues that I need to consider. You know, because you have that committee made up of people who that's their specialty and people who that are just volunteering. So it does help to kind of narrow that down. You have a staff of 3 women that literally bend over backwards to make sure that our not only homeowners, but even sometimes our contractors, especially newer ones, are being educated before they even get to that point of, hey, you put this in here, you know, you should have probably put this in instead, you know, like just making sure they have all of their supplies that they need in check before it comes to the committee incomplete. I think the committee's done an amazing job at being able to approve things with contingencies that are little minor things that the contractor or the architect can send in. That's not going to change the entire forecast of the approval. So I think there's a lot of things that come into play.
I think it's a lot of what you said, but also being able to implement finally my dream ARC, being all great volunteers that are not just willing, but enjoy their meetings. The meetings are shorter because on the front end, so much is taken care of with David and Tiffany meeting with Doug and Chris and possibly Dora, and Chris managing everything so upfront. So it's more simplistic when they go into meeting. And then you got to board liaisons that are educated, know their job going in there. They stay away from what I always hated the most. I don't like, or I don't think those words are gone. And if anybody catches themselves, I swear, I know they still hear me from a year ago. Your thinking and your liking don't come into play, period. And, I mean, you've sat in the meetings, they're just, it's a pleasure when I sub for one of these guys and go in there, how quick it's done, how educated everyone is. And, yeah, it's much smoother. And I hear it still out on the streets all the time, how much, people enjoy our new ARC.
Can we, since I don't think anyone's in the audience here and I don't think we're getting any views on this, can we put something together maybe in the meeting minutes or something that just kind of summarizes that, you know, there was a discussion of the ARC and the steps that have been taken for efficiency and improvement and the results that are coming out of that. You know, it was discussed that it was, you know, due in large part to streamlining efficiency, et cetera. So, I mean, might as well try to communicate this to membership in some way. You know, and because I don't think that it's related to being permissive, which I think is the other myth.
That is what some people are thinking, and that's a shame. Yeah. So I think spelling it out, maybe an ARC corner.
Right. Because all the things eventually, I mean, all the things that we're going to get approved eventually before are getting or I'm putting it backwards. The things that are being approved now versus the things that were getting approved a few years ago are essentially the same things. It's just a matter of how many burdens and hurdles that you're putting in there. So instead of going to the ARC 6 times to eventually get an outcome that is yes, now you're going to the ARC twice to get the same outcome.
And I think that's another part that is really well is the committee and Chris are very focused on if it is a no or it is a non-approval. Here are the black and white reasons why. And Chris is always open to have any of them call her to discuss a way, you know, like a way to meet the requirements without, you know, without compromising completely what they wanted to do with their vision in the first place.
Yeah, I think, I mean, this slide there's nothing to hide there. I think that's we could do a by the numbers in the compass or something and, you know, highlight this, especially with the decision outcomes are right at 70%. So
that might be even the better venue is to throw something together and the compass, you know, focus on the ARC and, and, you know, maybe some Q&As or FAQs or something like that.
Yeah, it was either you or Vicky, I think, a couple meetings ago mentioned we ought to get this out there. So yeah, we're happy to. Yeah, we can look at that.
I think it's a good idea.
Communication campaign.
I mean, and we've got a lot to share with our members, a lot of good things to share.
I think that was it for us.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Sorry.
Don't have anybody online right now aside from Leanne and myself.
That's what I was just going to say. You're reading my mind again.
All right, so the next thing we're on to is committee reports. If anybody has anything to report for the committees.
Does anybody have any updates? I'll just, are Bob and or Vicky, are they on?
No, they're
Either?
both out for today.
Okay. All right. So we've pretty much talked about ARC unless you've got something else to add.
No, we've just been concentrating on the revisions to the design out. Everything else is running smooth.
Excellent. Betty, do you have any updates with?
No, we're
You know?
kind of in hiatus, you know, we'll be picking up,
Yeah.
we'll be picking up the events again in September, although we may start in August because we had to cancel what we had in May due to an illness. But you're coming up in the fall, so we probably want to talk about a little bit, not here, but, you know, think about how you want to spend your time at one of our potlucks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Sure.
Then I'll go to the one you go to. I need to make a point. I haven't gone in a while. Okay, and I guess I could talk a little bit about leadership meeting. David Sawyer is going to host our next one. I think he's just trying to get through these last the last holiday, this one coming up, and we had some major golf tournaments. He's been very busy, lots of weddings, so I think we're gonna get past the 4th of July. And then, you and David will play around with the dates for our next leadership
Mhm.
meeting, and, everyone, our first meeting went with the heads and, whoever they chose as the people that would, join every month.
Can you send me that list so I have the right email?
Yeah, sure. Oh, I thought we did that. Maybe we didn't. I'll definitely do that. I'll do that
Thank
while
you.
we're in here. Just trying to get on the same page. Everyone seems really excited. We're definitely gonna start trying to talk with each other before different holidays so we can have shared themed decorations. Get on the same page so far as not trying to do events at the same time unless we're doing it together, so we're not stepping on other toes. Meeting went really well, and looking forward to the next one. So that is that. And anything else about committees?
I know we wanted to touch on goals. You want to do that in executive or? I think, did you mention?
Yeah, what
kind of-
I had just mentioned in my comment was, hey, we're halfway through the year. I think it would be a good time for us to assess and look at the goals that were set at the beginning of the year, by the board, and see where we are in terms of a bit of a benchmarking comparison.
Yep.
I don't know if you want to throw that into executive or here.
Well, Dora's gonna need to pull up everything we talked about so far as the goals go. Are you able to do that?
Yeah, we have it in mind.
I mean, we could have just a phone call to cover that briefly.
I have it available. I was just planning on doing an executive, so I had the 10 minutes while everyone's getting a break to pull
Oh, I see.
everything up. Like I have it, I just.
That'd be good.
Yeah, I think we should do all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's easier.
I just don't want another thing we're talking about go and get forgotten about. And that it is a good time for us to evaluate our goals. So thank you for that. Okay. Board president's report, I really, Doug and Dora cover everything, so we're good there. Unless anyone has any questions for me. Okay. Well, we can adjourn this public session. It is 9:34. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? All right, we're adjourned, and let's give ourselves about 10 minutes.